Welcome to the Track to AI podcast, your guide for AI and tech solutions, powered by Shay2. I'm your host, Amber Amordiki, and I speak with experts about how AI can be a tool for companies, not a replacement for employees. From AI integration to practical use cases, you'll get the clarity you need to make smarter decisions for your company. If you're ready to learn about AI solutions that actually work, well, you've come to the right place. It's time to get on track. Hey everyone, I'm your host, Amber Amordiki. If you're a company leader, or even if you're an employee of one, gaining a competitive edge might be top of mind, or at the very least, trying to stay relevant in your competitive industry. And one of the ways that we know to do that is by implementing AI across your entire company, which is something, of course, we talk a lot about on this show. But today, we're going to shift the focus just a little bit on what would it look like if a company does not implement AI, or should I say, does not implement AI properly to get the business outcomes that they're looking for. Today's guest helps executives make sense of AI-enabled research and real-world data that they can use to make practical business outcomes. So we're going to hear from him in just a bit. But first, as always, everyone, please go ahead and follow the Track to AI podcast wherever you are listening or watching the show right now. If you're on Apple, go ahead and leave us a review and please rate the show. You would not believe how much it helps make the show more discoverable for new listeners. So if you wouldn't mind taking a few seconds to go do that, I really appreciate it. Also, we have a free report that you can download at www.tracktoaipodcast.com. It is the 5 best practices for CIOs who are leading the AI implementation initiatives at their companies. And I think it's a great resource, even if you're not a CIO. So it's free. It's for you. Go to www.tracktoaipodcast to get your free report today. All right, guys, on with the show. My guest today is Gowtham Sampath. He is the Assistant Director and Principal Analyst at ISG. Gowtham, welcome to the Track to AI podcast.
Thank you very much, Amber, for having me here today. It's a pleasure and it's an honor to speak on a topic that I'm very excited about.
Amazing. I'm very excited to hear your take on a lot of the questions I have for you today. But before we dive in, I have a little bit of a silly little warm-up question for you.
Okay?
So when you're working with conversational AI
Mm-hmm.
models, ChatGPT, Cloud, Grok, Copilot, you name your pick, when you're prompting it, do you
Okay.
say words like please, thank you? How polite are you with conversational AI, and how polite should we be?
That's not a silly question, but I think it's an important question. I think usually I am polite with conversational AI. I definitely say please. Sometimes I say thank you. Sometimes I even include small things like haha. Okay, that was not the answer I was looking for. I think it's not because AI has feelings or AI understands exactly what my emotions are. I think I think the politeness comes from within, where I think of the AI not necessarily as a tool, but as an enhancement, as a storyboard or as a backboard that is going to reflect my own thoughts back to me. And in order for me to be a little bit more clearer, a little bit more structured, a little bit more specific in what I want to treat it as good as a person. So conversing with politeness makes my thoughts more precise, makes it a lot more structured in a way that I want it to be. And because AI tends to work a lot more accurately or a lot more clearly when we are more specific about the task, when we give it a lot more context, when we give it a lot more of emphasis in terms of what the content is supposed to be. Hence, because I treat it as another person that I would probably want to respect and throw my thoughts at and then get some feedback from them. I think that is the only intent of me being polite with it or trying to say that, keep the conversation a little bit more subtle in the sense. But, if saying please and thank you is going to help me interact with people much more thoughtfully, I think I want to inculcate that as a habit when I want to make my conversations with another tool, or not necessarily thinking it of as tool, but it's probably a good habit so that it helps me become a better prompter, or it helps me become a better structured conversation with AI rather than it just being, good manners, or being very just on the basis of politeness. I hope that answers.
Yeah, it totally answers. That actually makes a lot of sense. I like what you said about how using, that's just how you naturally speak to people. You are a polite person, you use your manners. So it's only natural for you to do the same with something that's trying to help you. And I also find that AI, it's also polite too. Like there are times when I will encourage it and it gets, I don't want to say happy because like does it really have feelings? Probably not, like you said, but I think it kind of humanizes the whole experience, and like you said, kind of you're able to clearly communicate exactly what you want in a natural way, so, thank you for answering that.
Absolutely.
Now we're gonna dive into the deep end of our subject matter just right off the bat. I really wanna know, Gautam, and of course, this might not apply to all industries, but do you think that companies that fail to adopt AI or fail to adopt it successfully in the next few years are at a greater risk of going out of business? Or is that a dramatic claim to make right now?
I think you were spot on with one of the keywords that you utilized, let's say across industries. Okay. So I would say at this point in time that not all of the businesses are definitely going to just phase out. It's not like one of those snaps by Thanos. Not going to happen that way. But I think they will become less relevant. They will definitely become less competitive, and that would make them less profitable. Um, Over the next few years, I would say not all companies are going to disappear just because they don't use AI. But inadvertently, the way AI has become consumerized, I think somewhere or the other, without them knowing, everybody is probably using AI in one way or the other. Okay. So formally introducing or formally implementing AI is probably the best thing to think about. But at the same time, we also need to worry about how different industries are also going to or facing maturity in terms of how they adopt technology, right? And they do it for different reasons. They do it for different speeds. They do it according to the needs and wants of their business processes and their business objectives and a lot of other things. So I definitely do things that companies that ignore AI completely, like not even thinking about AI, are definitely taking a very huge business risk. The I think the bigger issue will not be only about just survival. It'll become more in terms of competitiveness. And competitiveness today is arising at a global stage where anybody across the corner of the world can compete with you in any way, form of or other, because internet, cloud, quite a lot of other technologies are prevalent. And if you do not use AI in such a scenario, you will be forced to, let's say, become less relevant, as I said. What will happen is some of your competitors will be able to do things faster, cheaper, personalize much more effectively. They'll be able to, they'll have a bunch of decisions to take, or they'll have better decisions that are given to them that are in front of them, which means they will have a better chance of doing things much, much more better than what you are. So what is going to happen is based on cost, based on their ability to change, adapt themselves in the face of market dynamics and other things. It's just going to affect a lot of things when you choose not to invest in AI. I think that's what will happen.
And we've seen this before in, the emerging technologies of yesteryear, whether it was the internet, smartphones, even the cloud. I wanna know though, how is the AI wave different when it comes to the speed at which companies can fall behind if they don't start investing sooner rather than later.
They changed the way how humans as such, how we think about certain things within our own personal lives versus how we think about it in an enterprise. In an enterprise scenario or in a business scenario in very different ways. So when you think about internet, it completely changed the dimension of how we think about connectivity. The smartphones and mobile phones, they changed the way how we get access to content or how we get access to something else or somebody else. Cloud changed the complete way how you can visualize infrastructure. How can you think about being at the same time? It was almost as good as being omnipresent. You can be anywhere and everywhere across the world when you start using cloud. However, when you think about AI, it is not one of those technology elements that is out there in the in the front facing. It is more about how work is getting done in itself. So let's say, for example, I might have internet and I might choose to do some things in a slightly different way. I might have a smartphone and I can still use internet to connect to the cloud and do things, a lot of these things. But AI is going to change the work that I'm going to do in a very different way. I think that's where the crux is. It's about the work in itself, and quite a lot of times, the perception out there is that it is a high level of automation. But a high level of automation is just scratching the surface of what AI can actually accomplish. It is more about how to reimagine the complete work that we can think about today and become more effective, become more enhanced, and do it in a very different way. The other aspect of AI is beyond mobile or beyond cloud or internet. I would probably say this was probably the most, let's say, impactful technology in recent years that has been consumerized in a very, very fast amount of time. I think in a very less amount of time. I think there were statistics which said that, Facebook hit so many millions of users at so and so point in time. Twitter did something, but OpenAI's ChatGPT was able to hit it in much lesser time. I think it was less than a week or so, where it hit a million number of users on that. That's the level of consumerization that, today it is available to anybody. I had my nephew here for his holidays and he's speaking with his friend. They are about in fifth to sixth grade. And they are talking about, oh, I can see ChatGPT on uncle's system. And, this is what I do for ChatGPT. It gives you fantastic answers, but, you should know how to ask questions to it as well. That is the level of penetration that ChatGPT or AI has able to, make in today's world. So tools are available, powerful tools are available to everybody in an instant. And of course, cloud, mobile, and internet made this happen. But this is allowing you to experience some of these things, some of that work in a very different way. So what would have taken certain amount of time before AI is now in a blink of an eye. It's just so fast. And you keep hearing about AI native companies that are just being set up in a matter of hours or so. And everything can be done in so quick order that it's all about whether you're able to utilize the potential of AI and get to certain things. How can you do things in weeks, not years? I mean, there used to be cases where, oh, this company was found in a garage and it took so many years for them to get to some place. Now it's a matter of weeks. So that's the power of AI.
And in a matter of weeks, and they're saving so much money on, not having to hire more people at that stage, at least in the, in the startup stage. It's incredible. Yeah.
It is. It is. It is fantastic.
So going back to kind of the subject matter of like what happens if companies don't do this, when do you think it's too late for them to catch up if they, let's say they're not really buying it, they're still skeptical, they're like you said in your previous answers, um, they aren't even really thinking about it or considering it. Is there a point of no return, do you think, for those types of companies?
I think, point of no return for me, I think about it much more in practical sense. So I've been sending good thoughts about how I want to be more healthy, more active. Is it too late for me to become active? Not necessarily. I can pick it up even tomorrow. But, if I would have picked it up, let's say, a couple of months back, I think I would have been a lot more active, a lot more physical today. So sending good thoughts about some of these things is always, it's not going to result in great outputs. So while I do not necessarily think that it is too late for companies, but I think the time has come where it was a lot more easier to get on board with AI. And I think we have passed that time now. So, which means there are a lot of front runners, there are a lot of companies that have already started picking up on how best to utilize some of these things. While there is no point of return, I would still say that, the longer you wait, the harder it is going to become catching up to that. And eventually, we also need to understand that when we are thinking about investing in AI, you're not just buying tools, or you're not just buying a chatbot and you're just not going to implement it and say, okay, I'm done with AI. I don't think that is something that is what is meant by AI. And hence, there is no point of return that we can fix on a calendar and say that, okay, uh, 31st of April is the last date, we cannot go, or 30th of April is the last date, we cannot go back any. It is more about you thinking about how your competitors are going to have a compounding effect on how they are able to utilize and how quickly they are able to ramp up and do quite a lot of things much more better than you. So you need to have already joined the race. And if you have not joined the race, I think sending thoughts is not going to help. You need to start implementing or acting on it right away. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of goes into my next question. We are seeing a lot of companies who are trying to add AI into their processes, but it's not working for them. So if you wouldn't mind explaining to us maybe an example, a real world example of an AI success story, what are companies who are successfully implementing AI across the board? What are they doing differently?
I think one of the first things, as I said, the previous answer when I gave you, I think it came from one of the examples that I was given to, and I was speaking to one of the tech leaders, and this is what came through. So I think when a business leader or an enterprise is thinking about AI, it is not about a tool. It is not about, okay, taking a decision like, let's add a chatbot to our company. I don't think that's where the decision of AI, or that's where AI related thought process should go. I think what should come up first is a very structured approach in terms of what do you actually want to do with your company. Let's say, for example, you're in a particular business. It could be something around a contact center or a call center, and there are companies that are competitors that have already started doing better than you by using AI. But just following them blindly is not going to help you. You first need to understand what your domain is, what your expertise is, what are you trying to solve for your customers, and then take conscious decisions. Okay, I think we need some tool that would help us reduce certain KPIs. It could be something like, let's reduce the average call handling time or total resolution time by so much percentage. Can we reduce the first resolution calls to so and so percentage by introducing some other tool? Can we at least have some sort of a knowledge base that would help our agents that are speaking with customers? Can we improve their responses better than what we have today as a list of specific responses that somebody's thought or somebody's trained to say? These are very tangible and very solid KPIs that we can start off with. And then you walk backwards towards figuring out what sort of AI is going to help me, because there are different types of AI tools out there that are going to help you achieve all of these things. And a combination of this is typically going to work well for you. How you manage it, what's the process, and where do you need to put some of these things. But before that, we also need to think something that I've been running my business for so long. I do understand the business processes, and I have some data about what I've been doing so far. And the only problem is I'm not able to do anything with that data. I'm not able to utilize the data effectively, probably because I do not have the necessary tools. That's where AI comes in. The AI can look at all of that data as part of your knowledge base. You have to define certain things in terms of guardrails. You have to give it direction. You don't have to say please and thank you, but you still have to tell it that, this is my direction. This is my business process. This is how I want. These are my constructs. These are my guardrails. You need to follow some of these processes. You need to stay within some of these things. And then when we start measuring the outcome, that's going to show up as a much more tangible and a much more better way of implementing AI. And we have seen that happen in quite a few of the cases. In fact, we sat with about 80 plus providers last year, And I would have gone through at least 10 cases per provider, which means about 800 cases, 850 cases. And in all of the cases, one of the key things that keep coming up again and again is, do you understand where you want to implement AI? If you do not, please let us know. Let us understand your business processes, and we will tell you where it makes sense for you to invest in AI. I think one of the key things that we also need to understand is that companies sometimes they just think that there is a tool available out there, an AI tool. Perhaps it converts marketing materials and it can create certain images. And business leaders suddenly think that okay, I want this AI tool to be used within my team. Let me go with this, and they put that AI tool into their system, and suddenly it probably will not work in such a scenario because it is unfortunately, let's say, not a business problem that you're solving. You're just buying a tool. You're inherently accumulating tech debt, not necessarily solving a business problem with AI. So you first need to have a very clear idea about what your business is. What do I want to improve or enhance? Whether AI will help me there or not. And if AI is going to help me there, do I have the necessary data that AI can take, understand, and then start providing me with some good results? If you're in doubt, I think there are a lot of service providers out there that can probably start with providing the necessary level of advisory and consulting and other things that can set you up for success rather than just thinking a know-it-all approach and then, spending some huge dollars on it. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, we talk a lot about this on the show, having a clear plan, clear objectives, clear goals, and also, like you said earlier, identifying what isn't working in your workflow and your operations systems and whatnot. That's one of the key first steps to a successful AI adoption initiative. Um, and on that note, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about what does it look like for companies who do not implement AI, and I have a bad joke for the week for you. So stay tuned.
Shitu's Track to AI framework helps businesses adopt AI easily. In just 8 steps, you can unify data silos, maximize your ROI, and increase employee buy-in. Our experts will create a custom plan designed for your AI. Click the link in the show notes to learn more.
Okay, guys, the ad is over. It is time for you to hear the bad joke of the week. What did the computer mouse say to the keyboard? You're just my type. I'm so glad you laughed at that. Okay. That actually wasn't too bad. Not too bad. Okay, jumping back into our conversation, a lot of company leaders, they might be a bit hesitant to move quickly on AI because of compliance and different risk. But at the same time, as we've discussed, throughout this conversation, if they move too slow, that is also a risk. So, how can companies find that balance of quick AI implementation, but still take the necessary time to train their AI and get it compliance ready?
I think that's one of the biggest, let's say, concerns or challenges that we keep hearing. You take any survey that is about AI, I think there's definitely always the challenge around compliance and risk. I think that's one of the biggest tensions or the pain points of business leaders and chief ex officers. I think moving too fast also creates a bunch of legal security and reputational risk for sure. And moving slowly, let's say, creates that competitive bridge ahead of your company. So it's not about choosing one over the other. I think it's about trying to harmonize, trying to find a balance between how can you take certain things, certain use cases that would make sense, which can be rolled out quickly, and then scaling it up slowly with a much more controlled speed, not necessarily slow speed, but at a controlled speed. Now, how can companies actually do this? I think they first probably will have to, let's say, when they have a good understanding about their processes and certain other things, they will be in a position to, let's say, um, isolate certain use cases as low risk use cases. Let's say, for example, when we were talking to providers, one of the key questions we kept asking again and again is how much of some of these things that you showcase to the outside world, and when you say that, we have done this great things for enterprises, we have done this, we have reduced productivity, can you tell me how much of that is internalized within your own company? Okay. So internal productivity tools, things like knowledge summarizers, document summarization, certain small things like, do you also utilize an assistant or a co-pilot of sorts when you want to do coding within your company for smaller things? When there is a huge knowledge base or when there is a huge repository of data around POC, quite a lot of other things that you would typically find in an organization. Do you use very intelligent knowledge retrieval systems? So these are very low risk, small scale use cases that you can actually utilize within the boundaries of your own company, managing legal, compliance, regulatory, and so many other things without facing too much of risks. And these are not essentially customer facing. Yes, there will be internal customers, but at least you know for a fact that most of this is regulated, and these are use cases where you can actually utilize it in a way where you can see faster results, you can see the enhancements happening, all of that. And this things and these kind of use cases will allow you to build the momentum. And building momentum also means when you think about a lot of compliance and risk, right? It's not only like a checklist of things. It's more about how employees, human beings, feel about compliance and legal risk. So if we tell employees that they are not supposed to, let's say, upload confidential documents and other things within some of these AI tools, that's not only going to create apprehensions, but it is also not being, let's say, created as part of some of the culture, which means compliance and risk is not necessarily a checklist of things, but it is mostly humans involved, which means you need to allow them to train themselves in terms of how they can operate and how they can work well with AI, and slowly create some of these things as part of cultural change, as part of their maturity in terms of how they want to utilize AI. And so things like, how you think about governance, how you think about compliance, some of these things at certain points in time, we will utilize, let's say, security teams within our companies. You will have certain guardrails, you will put certain privacy, security controls, who can access it, who cannot access it. Once it is deployed, how can you monitor it? And there are certain observability standards and quite a few of the monitoring systems that are available out there that can actually start giving you some good results. But this is the approach is always like, take use cases which makes the most sense for you, low level or low risk use cases, apply them, allow your employees to grow with it, allow your employees to gain maturity with it, and slowly transition to larger, much more riskier, I wouldn't say riskier, but yeah, moderate risk use cases, and then you slowly start phasing it out. And typically a lot of service providers are out there who have adjacent capabilities in managing cybersecurity, application development, testing, and quite a lot of these things. And most of these things are available as part of their platforms today. We also can take some of that help into consideration. And I think philosophically as well, I think what we need to understand is there is no way that we can perfectly train AI. Let's say, for example, right now, if you and me sit on two different versions of the same chat GPT and ask the same question, the answer it's going to give you is going to be slightly different than the choice of words that it is going to use and give to me. So AI is like that, unfortunately. It's in many cases, while the answer might be the same, the approach and the choice of words and certain other things it's going to take is definitely going to differ. And these are some of the nuances that we need to start understanding, and we need to start growing with it. And stop treating compliance and risk as part of just a checklist. It needs to be embedded as part of how we want to invest in AI.
And with that, for our final question, Gautam, I would love for you to tell our audience what's one thing that you would love company leaders to understand about AI. Maybe it's a misconception that you hear among them,
Mhm.
aside from what you've discussed already today.
I think part of the answer, I was trying to, let's say, allude to it at one point in time during one of your questions that, it's not, it should not be looked at from a tool per se. It's not something like, I think the key word that we used to use is silver bullet. It's not something that you fire and then it's going to make everything change. And it's not the magic wand. It doesn't work that way. I think business leaders should first think about the business they are in, the objectives they are in, and figure out that there is a specific operating model to their business, and they also need to come out of that mindset which was slightly pre-AI era, which is more about processes still will remain the same, but I think when we think more about AI, it is about workflows that connects with quite a lot of the within the enterprise. So when you need to also realize that putting an AI tool in front of an employee and trying to get the most out of it is not going to work. They need to start thinking about use cases where workflows have to be enhanced. They need to think about how the existing data is, whether the workflows that are already existing are, fully connected. What are the kind of decisions that we need to take? Whether the teams are aligned within their organization, whether the teams are even willing to take the opportunity to work with AI, thinking about it in a very positive way that it is going to enhance their role rather than diminish, or rather than just throw them out. And in quite a lot of these scenarios, right, what we have seen is that AI tends to expose the weakness if you do not do it the right way. I think there was even one case of a particular AI company themselves somewhere in Sweden. I don't want to name names, but they went full on AI and they thought that, we don't need humans anymore. I think we're going to go with AI. And suddenly, 3 weeks, 4 weeks down the line, they realized not everything can be, let's say, be replaced with AI. You definitely need humans. So I think even human in the loop has gone now. I think it is more about the combination of how human and AI can work together and how can that enhance. So business leaders should often think about some of these things as, not treating AI as a tool that's going to replace humans and that's just going to give them multiple returns in terms of productivity or growth or revenue and all of those things. It's more about how can it fundamentally change the way that you were working, and how can it enhance parts of your workflow and parts of your business that will improve competitiveness, that will improve ways of thinking about some things that you were not privy to previously. It's going to work under the layers of knowledge that you have gathered over the years, and it's going to give you more options, better options, and it's going to help you apply some of these knowledge and some of these intelligence to make better decisions over a period of time. So that's how somebody should think, or that's how business leaders should start thinking about it. It's, again, it's also not that, if you invest in a big AI model, or if you invest in a model that sounds really fancy, it's again not just a piece of tech. It's something that should connect with your company strategy, with your domain. You should also have an understanding about whether you have the necessary data, processes, workflows, people, and most importantly, like what you rightly mentioned, the elements around governance and compliance. Are all of these things available, or all these things at my disposal? And then you take a very disciplined approach in terms of doing low risk approaches and then slowly moving towards moderate and then hitting the note at the right time. I think that's probably what I would say to business leaders, that it's not a magic bullet.
Well, thank you, Gautam, for sharing all of your nuggets of wisdom and knowledge with our audience today. I've certainly learned a lot, and I know they have too. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you very much for having me on this podcast, Amber. Much appreciated. It was a pleasant conversation, and I think I had fun explaining things the way that I know. But thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you watch or listen to your podcast, and go ahead and share it with your network. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Track2AI Podcast, using the number 2, of course. And to sign up to our email list, you can visit www.track2aipodcast.com. Until next time, stay in the know and get on track.
This podcast is for general informational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the guest are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of Shay2 Inc., its management, or employees. Listeners should not solely rely upon the information provided and should consult appropriate professionals for advice tailored to their individual specific needs. Neither the host, guest, nor Shay2 Inc. make any warranties, expressed or implied, regarding the information provided.